hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School, where I break down the most controversial subjects, the most engaging debates, the most intense subjects going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. We got a few big stories to cover. Also having a very important guest, a return guest. Brianna Wu will be in the building in just a few minutes. She's extraordinarily excited and ready to tell me all the ways that I'm wrong. We're going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to do that for each other, I should say. So much to talk about, though. Before we get to the stories that I brought her to come on and talk about, and we're going to talk about lots of stuff, not just Israel-Palestine, although that's big. We're going to talk about the state of the Democratic Party. As a devoted Democrat, I'm curious to know where Brianna Wu sees the party, where she sees her place in it, where she sees the party's place in the lives of working people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I got lots of questions for her about that, especially in the aftermath of today's Al Greene stunt. Al Greene was censured, and Democrats showed up and showed out in certain ways. So there's some stunting going on both sides. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Democrats. We'll talk about Al Greene. After that, later on in the show, I'll be talking about Indiana University, which just shut down all fraternity and sorority parties for what some would argue are very good reasons. We'll talk about that too. But before we get into any of that, there's a story that came out today that I found disturbing. Only way I can say it. Only way I can say it is I found it to be disturbing. A terrified 3-year-old girl was forced to the ground at gunpoint. And Winter Haven police, where it happened, are out here just calling it a bad look. Now, there's body cam footage out there, so you don't have to believe me, that shows the child and her mother laying face down, hands behind their backs, while officers claim they were just taking precautions during a gun-related arrest. It's chilling to watch this video. It's disturbing to see what happened. This little girl laying on her belly, terrified, screaming, literally pleading, "Please don't kill us. Please don't kill us," is what this little girl is begging the police to do. This is not something that should happen anywhere. This shouldn't be one of those "this shouldn't happen here" stories that we often do when bad things happen to people we care about. But when you look at this, and here's a look at it from Instagram, you can see the police here. You can see this little girl on the ground.
That's traumatic.
That's crazy, right in front of the little girl, man.
And they got a goddamn German Shepherd that's maybe overkill.
Look at that again. I'm going to play that again. Look at this little girl. Look at her. Look at her. Anyway, the girl's yelling, "Please don't kill me." The girl is literally yelling, "Please don't kill me. Don't kill us." And do you know what the police said? They didn't say, "Hey, we made a mistake." They didn't say, "Oh, we messed up." They didn't say, "Hey, we take accountability." The police said that the parents are to blame for the girl being scared. They said parents make kids scared of cops. And because parents make kids scared of cops, that girl was scared because of the parents, not because we had her face down at gunpoint. Who the hell at that age, or any age, is face down at gunpoint and isn't scared? I don't know anybody, even people who say Blue Lives Matter, even people who give money to the Fraternal Order Police every year, even people who love them some police, if they're face down on the ground and handcuffed with a gun to their head, I promise you they're going to be scared. Now, the police chief, who by the way is black, said that no laws or policies were broken and that the cop never actually pointed the gun at the child. That's their argument, that the gun wasn't actually pointed at the child. I want you to look at this. I'll make the image a little smaller so you can see everything at once. I was, you know, just look at this. Just look at this, y'all. Just look at this. It's a short clip, but it's everywhere. Look, you see this officer here? You see this officer? You see this officer? You see these people? You see these cuffs? What are we talking about? If the best thing you can say is there's no gun pointed at her, which there clearly is, because he's putting it back in a holster right there. Look again. That's a gun in his hand. Now, are we going to say that it wasn't literally pointed at her, that it was an inch to the left of her skull? What are we talking about? What are we talking about? This is indefensible. I don't care if they're black, red, yellow, or white. I don't care if the police chief is black, red, yellow, or white. The race of the police chief, the race of the officers has nothing to do with any of this. Shit, the race of the baby ain't got nothing to do with this. This is about police terrorizing our community. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. It's unacceptable, it's indefensible, and it's disgusting, and we're going to hold them accountable. We're going to hold them accountable. I need every one of you all to find the Winter Haven police. I need you to write letters. I need you to jam their circuit boards. I need you to call the district attorney in Winter Haven, and I need you to demand an investigation. I need you to call the mayor's office of Winter. I need you to call everybody who has the ability to hold these people accountable, because this cannot happen. This should not happen. All right, y'all. Got me worked up already. Anyway, let's get on to something only slightly less infuriating. American politics. Whew. Congress just hit Al Greene with a rare censure for calling out Donald Trump. And not only was this a rare moment where somebody gets censured, we saw Rashida Tlaib get censured in the fall. It rarely happens, though. I mean, it's happened more like this year than it happened damn near in like 100 years. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not by much. Anyway, Al Greene was censured, but it wasn't just because of a Republican majority. The Democrats helped do it. Greene was dragged out of the chamber for heckling Donald Trump over Medicaid cuts, but 10 Democrats joined. 10 Democrats joined. Why would you do that, Democrats? Now, I'm not a Democrat, and I don't play one on TV, but I will tell you this. If I were a Democrat, I'd be mad as hell at these fools right here. And I'm not a Democrat, and I'm mad as hell at these fools right here. Look them up. Find out who they are. Find out which people would censure, their own party member when they didn't have to do that. And here's the thing, and this is what gets frustrating. MAGA Republicans, whole MAGA Republicans who come out and do things like Marjorie Taylor Greene did, like Lauren Boebert did. They heckled Joe Biden. They literally heckled Joe Biden. They got no consequences. Did we forget what kind of memory do we have? It seems like we have the shortest memories ever when it comes to what Republicans do. Again, I'm not making Democratic talking points here. I'm saying, come on, we can do better here. Joy-Ann Reid posted this. Shout out to Joy-Ann Reid. This is why we need her brilliance on TV. Republicans and 10 Democrats voted to censure Representative Al Greene for disrupting Trump's speech. And then you look at this timeline. In 2022, no censure. 2023, no censure. This Boebert and Greene and Taylor Greene in 2022 yelling at Biden. 23, Greene and Lisa McClain yelling at Biden. 2024, yelling at Biden. You notice something here? I'm not saying this is racial, to be clear. I'm saying that this is partisan. Now, you could argue that Al Greene didn't sit down even when he was given a warning, but these people didn't sit down. And they weren't even pressured as much. I mean, it's interesting to see how nobody applied any pressure to them at all. This is the problem. And mind you, while Democrats are getting censured, the Democrats came out in the chamber today and sang, "We shall overcome." What is wrong with y'all? That's the solution? Anyway, you know what? enough of me. Let me bring in somebody who has opinions on matters. Brianna Wu joins us. Would you identify as a Democratic strategist?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Fair?
I think we're kind of in a real hell of a mess right now, Mark. And I'm really surprised, to be honest with you, that you have that reaction to the Al Green thing. I mean, when I think about what's broken with the Democratic Party, like let me just preface this thought here. So when I think about what's broken with the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi yesterday in the lead up to the State of the Union, she puts out something and it's like, and this person is going to be on the floor to tell this story, or whatever nonsense. Like, you've seen this bullshit a million times. And I think there's like such a disconnect between what the American people know is real and the willingness of Democrats to say it. So I just see these theatrics and it's just like, what's going on, y'all? Is this adult hour? Like, are we interested in actually getting a message together that can win in the midterms? Or are we just going to do this childish, like I'm holier than thou theatrics that got us into this mess in the first place? So
the
I'm
theatrics
really
for you,
surprised.
the theatrics for you is the singing.
It's all of it. It's the entire Democratic playbook. It's Nancy Pelosi. It's throwing a very staged temper tantrum on the floor. It's white people singing "We Will Overcome," which is just ultra cringe. All of it. It's like, say something fucking real, y'all. It's embarrassing at this point.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. Yeah, I'm frustrated at the 10 Democrats that sold them out. Like, stand for something. I'm frustrated at the singing on the floor, the performative theatrics. I mean, it's only slightly less cringy than them taking a knee or wearing kente cloth 5 years ago. I mean, I hate all of it. I hate all of it. I'm not a Democrat, and I hate it. I hate it because it's a reminder that the Democratic Party is unserious and that they don't have an actual policy agenda that can actually help the American people.
We are fundamentally people pleasers. The party is our fundamental nature is that of someone that will say whatever they think you want to hear in a given moment. And it causes us to just do the most cringy things. I don't like Donald Trump. I worked 70-hour weeks to try to defeat him. I'm not a fan, but the reason the American people like him is because he says what he thinks, as do the Republicans. It's racist, horrible stuff, but they will say what they think. And until we can start saying something real, we are going to continue to have our asses kicked in these elections.
Tropical Ding Dong, funny name, said, I don't know, Mark, doesn't sound like it to me. Sounds like Brianna speaking on both sides of her mouth because she specifically is calling Al Green performative too. I'm not worried about this both sides of your mouth part, but you actually disagree with Al Green standing up and protesting Donald Trump as well. That's where I don't actually have an issue with Al Green.
I don't care if he wants to do it. That's fine. If the Democrats want to do something and censure, what I'm saying is this is not a credible plan to stop Donald Trump. What is a credible plan to stop Donald Trump is for Democrats to get our shit together and to do something to win the midterms, which we have no credible plan to do right now. Like, it's nothing. I know you're not in these meetings, Mark. It's just a free-for-all. It's grievance and people sitting around. Like, we've got to get a plan together. We have to have an identity as a party. Yeah, I think something you would agree with me on is this, like, quadrupling down on every single identity out there. I will say this as a trans woman, like this trans sports nonsense, the fact that we're talking about this.
What's the trans sports nonsense?
I think it is insane that we are saying trans women should be in sports. It is absolutely insane to me. Do I think it's that big a deal? No. Does it help me as a trans woman if we are like leaning into the most unpopular issue imaginable? Like, no, we've got to focus on bread and butter stuff. So I think this Democratic Party tendency to highlight the most inconsequential identity issues instead of the real policies that help people, like trans women access to HRT coverage or guaranteed housing, that's what we need. And we're just fundamentally not a serious party.
That's interesting because from my perspective,
please,
the Republicans made this the issue. The trans people are taking over your swim teams and your basketball teams. 100%. They're taking over your bathrooms, right? They created this kind of trans hysteria that created all the transphobia, or at least vocalized transphobia and the trans hysteria, the trans antagonisms, etc. And then, to your point, Democrats responded by making that an issue that trumped economics, that trumped jobs, that trumped schools, that trumped all the other things.
Yes.
But it seemed to me that it was less Democrats making this an issue and more Democrats doing a bad job of responding to the Republican tactic. Would that be accurate?
100% across the board. And look, Mark, you know this. Like, you just showed that heartbreaking TikTok at the video at the beginning of this. So that 3-year-old girl on the ground. That breaks my heart. I got my start in journalism, like covering police successes in Mississippi, which is very racialized. I think you understand sometimes a community has an issue forced on you and it's not your fault. The Republicans make it a wedge issue and it's bullshit, but you've still got to respond to it in an effective way instead of doubling down on stupid. And I think that's where the trans community is right now.
Someone here said she's a transphobe herself. You're saying that based on your statement about trans women playing sports. Before we move on, I want to give you a chance to sort of explain that point with clarity. Why should trans women not play competitive sports in the women's category? For example, a high school girls basketball team, you're saying a trans woman shouldn't be on the high school girl or college women's basketball team.
I want to be really clear on this. I understand firsthand how much taking anti-androgens affects your athletic ability. I'm a fairly serious runner, and my times plummeted when I got on anti-androgens. So do I personally think we have that big an advantage? No, I don't. But I also think this all or nothing mentality that we've taken to trans rights is objectively making the public not side with this. Look at every single poll out there. Support for us is dwindling, and we've got to get back to what matters. What do trans women actually need? We need access to health care. We need surgery. We need guaranteed, like, the ability for people not to discriminate against us at work. We need housing non-discrimination, very similar to what Black people need, actually. So we need to focus on the issues that really affect our community and understand this is not utopia. Like, we've got to strategize the same way you have, the same way Jewish people have, and the same way that the women's civil rights.
So that's been the Democratic response for the last 10 years, which is Republicans are making mountains out of molehills. This isn't even a big issue. It's an infinitesimal number of people trying to do this. Stop making this a thing.
Is that working?
No, I'm with you, but I'm hearing you say something different. You're actually saying, in addition to that it's actually unfair to do that. It's actually, you're agreeing with the Republican side to the extent that you actually think it's unfair for women to compete in these sports.
I think that trans women post-puberty, we probably have some advantage. I think those advantages are overstated. Like, this is a nuanced position. This is my life, and I have nuanced positions on it. So if you've got someone like me, I'm a fairly serious runner, right? Do I have some advantage over cis women because I have extremely long legs? Yes, for distance running. Am I also at a disadvantage because, like, those teenage years I spent, like, considering suicide and I didn't, like, get athletic training? Yes, that's another disadvantage. So, like, do we at the end of the day have some advantages in some of these sports? Probably. I don't think it's that big a deal, but considering the polling that I'm looking at, this just doesn't seem like a fight we should have. Does that make sense to you?
It makes total sense. I just wanted to tease out the two issues, both the tactical piece and then the philosophical, ideological piece about whether or not it's fair or not. Because oftentimes I find people are talking past each other, and as a trans person, I wanted your take, because oftentimes it's non-trans people trying to decide the futures, the fates, the lives of trans people. And so, and to me, that shouldn't be the only conversation we're having. We should be having a conversation together, but trans people have to be at the center of that conversation.
I mean, let's look at Black civil rights. I mean, Mark, you are in a category I am not. There's no people in the United States that have had to be as pragmatic about your civil rights as you have. I mean, just being really straight up with you, there are a trillion things we could sit here on the show that are not fair to Black people. But you don't see, like, you do see a prioritization of what the community needs and what you advocate. It's not all or nothing. And I think, like, if you look at the gains that have been made over my lifetime, even though they're rolling back now, that seems like that's been an effective strategy. Or maybe you think I'm wrong.
No, I think you always have to be tactical. I think the key is always, what you're willing to concede, right? Like I would not want tactically to concede something that fundamentally denies my humanity or reinforces the denial of my humanity, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to say, we win today, we fight tomorrow, we win tomorrow, we fight the next. And I get that. And so as long as there's been a Black struggle, there's been tactical disagreements about how to do that. And so I think where it gets even more complicated for me, as we talk about these trans issues, is that they're operating at the intersection of all these other things like poverty, like race, and all these other things. So like Black trans women are particularly vulnerable to death, to being murdered. Although all trans women are vulnerable, right? Homelessness, all trans kids are vulnerable. Suicide, all trans kids are vulnerable. So we have to think about these different populations, what educational access looks like, what housing access looks like, criminal legal system. And so it's a very complicated, messy thing, and I don't pretend to know the answer.
Well, I want to bring this back to the main topic, Marc, because what makes sense to me, and I understand you distance yourself from being a Democrat. I'm proud to be a Democrat.
I don't distance. I'm just not one. It's not. I've never been.
You do. But it makes sense to me. Like I think as the Democratic Party is searching for an identity from here, something can actually win. I want us to become brawlers for the middle class and for poor people. And don't get me wrong, I want the Democratic Party when it comes up to vote for my health care. But we've got to stop chasing every single cultural issue down the street and understand the purpose of the Democratic Party is not to make people feel good, it's to win elections. And if we need to go out there and really focus on economics in a way that the Republicans won't, that is a strategy that makes sense to me. And I think once you take away these identity politics, I don't know what the Democratic Party is.
What do you say to the person who will say to you, Brianna Wu, but identity politics is precisely what Republicans are trading in?
100%.
In ways, though, that literally will ruin your life. I mean, when Donald Trump says that he's making 2 gender categories.
It's horrible. It's really damaged me. Yes.
Right. So, I mean, if Democrats aren't fighting for that issue and they're only fighting for the economics, or if the Green Party or the Communist Party or whoever on the left is saying, look, we got to fight for the cultural politics as well and the identity politics as well, not because we prioritize that over economics, but because they're killing you.
Right.
What do you say?
You're right to fight for that, but that doesn't have to be the core thing that we talk to the American people about. I want to be really clear, Marc, because so much of my job is looking at polling. The American people genuinely go look at the polling right now, think that the Democratic Party cares more about LGBT issues than economics. And that's just a fundamental marketing failure. So I'm saying when these bills come up, let's vote the right way on it, but it should not be what we are talking to death about every single time. I don't want to see the next Democratic convention have the equivalent of some cringy fight song. I want us to genuinely communicate to the American people, we're pissed about how screwed you're being in this economy with the inflation. We're really serious about changing this. We're as angry about this as we could possibly be. So it's just like there's a disconnect between the elites that go to Harvard and like run these campaigns and the people we're asking to vote for us. I know you see this disconnect.
I mean, the disconnects are all over the place. There's no doubt about that, and that's why. And I know we didn't come to talk about that, but we got there. And as you told me before we started, let's see where this conversation goes. And I'm glad. 100%. I love that, I appreciate your willingness to have those conversations in all these different directions. I want to bring you though into the conversation that I think you wanted to have. And for clarity's sake, y'all, Brianna came on July or August, whatever the Democratic convention was. It must have been August. And we had a very spirited debate and conversation about a million things that went a really long time.
It was just like, it was all right. We went through 1948, then we went to the Second Intifada.
It was a lot. and you're welcome to come back and we can have a really long conversation about any other topic. But today you had made an observation about the pro-Palestinian movement and transphobia.
Yeah.
That I found curious. So I wanted to give you a chance, first of all, to state your position so that.
Well, I think it was more of a question because when I talked to you, Mark, in June or July or whenever it was, Mark, yeah, you said something to me I thought was really interesting because I was saying, like, if you look at the history of the civil rights movement, Jewish people have been there. I grew up in Mississippi, and the Mississippi burning murder, that was one Black person and two Jewish people that were down in Mississippi registering, Black people to vote, trying to take care of that. There's a rich history of that in my state. And yeah, you said to me something you thought I thought was fairly striking, saying that you didn't consider like support to be transactional in that way. Right. And I was really thinking through that afterwards because the YouTube comments from our debate, which I understand that's not you, I don't judge you for that, but overall, like the comments I get from the Free Palestine people are overwhelmingly transphobic. Like the most transphobic comments I get are not from Republicans, they are from Islamists that believe in this issue. So I guess I wanted to just really ask you a direct question. It's like, why should I, as someone that's really affected by these attitudes, why should I seek to put a group into power that literally has made people like me illegal there and just as a movement consistently treats me with a complete lack of humanity? Like, what answer would you have for that?
So you said a few things that I'll
please, let's go through it.
First, yeah, I don't want to conflate Islamists with the pro-Palestine movement as you just did.
Really? Why?
Because most of the pro-Palestine movement are not Islamists. And
Gaza itself is an Islamist. Like it operates under Sharia law. Yes.
We're talking about a movement, right? I'm assuming the people that you are getting comments from are not in Gaza. Right, we're talking about the pro-Palestine movement. You're talking about people, for example, who are commenting from our exchange. Those people aren't in Gaza. The pro-Palestinian movement is a global movement, and most of the people who are pro-Palestinian aren't even Muslim, much less Islamists. Mm-hmm. Second, you can be Muslim and not be Islamist.
Yes, yes.
And so much of even historic Palestine, and I don't mean historically, I mean like much of the region right now. Most Palestinians are Muslim, but most don't live in Gaza, and most of those people would not identify as Islamists based on all the polls, based on all the data.
Really, you don't think Free Palestine at its core is
an Islamist movement?
I absolutely think that.
What does Islamist mean to you?
This project to conflate Islam with the state and to usher that into a form of government.
So historically, that hasn't been the case, like political Islam. But I don't exactly agree with that definition of it.
You don't think so, really?
No, but again, there are a couple of things happening simultaneously here. And I just want to tease each of them out. The idea, first of all, that the pro-Palestine movement is concentrated in Gaza, to me, is at one, that's just empirically incorrect, right?
I don't think I said that.
No, but what I'm saying is your evidence that the pro-Palestine movement is Islamist is the demographics and political arrangements of Gaza. But I'm saying it's a global movement.
Well, let's go through this. Who is supporting Palestine? It's a bunch of Islamist states over there, correct? Like it's Iran. It's they're getting. You
consider Lebanon Islamist?
I don't know if I would say that, but I would say many.
You consider Egypt Islamist?
I think that there.
You consider Morocco Islamist?
I think there's fundamentally a Islamist project over there that is fueling this. Yes. Over
where? I'm in the Middle East.
100%. Do you not?
So maybe we're talking about two different things.
Please.
When you said the pro-Palestine movement, you didn't actually mean the pro-Palestine movement. You mean Middle Eastern countries that are supporting Palestine.
No, I'm talking about the whole enchilada of everything from my Twitter mentions to the people like sending rockets over there to launch at Israeli civilians. Every piece of it.
And you think the people in your Twitter mentions are Islamists based on what?
100%. You look at them and the things that they say, it is 100%.
Give me an example of something they say that shows that they're Islamists.
Dude, just go read it. Like, I feel like you're really just.
No, I'm really not following. I'm not being pedantic. I'm genuinely trying to understand. Like what give me, like I don't I understand the transphobic part of it, and we're in agreement. If somebody's saying something, but I'm saying, why are we assuming that they're Islamists?
Because when I look at their Twitter feeds, it is universally stuff praising Islam, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so
and hold on, Mark. This is important. That if I showed you my DMs right now, the most degrading comments I get are very talking about how Islam is going to judge me and they're going to kill me based on their law and their traditions and all of that. Like if you read it, it would not be a mystery to you.
I'm not doubting that you get awful things in your DMs. I'm asking you to explain it because I haven't seen them.
Okay.
And this is the first time you're raising this to me. This isn't like we had this conversation before. So everything I'm asking you is genuinely to understand your position.
But I mean, if you look at the protests in downtown Boston, they're saying things like "Death to America." Like, you know, there's a.
And you see that as an Islamist chant.
I think that this is part of a zeitgeist that is seeking to overwhelm the West and Western democracy and replace something. And I think gullible people are being sucked into it. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's move past it. We're not going to agree on that.
Well, hold on. No, you don't just get to ask me questions. You got.
What would you like me to do?
Yes.
I'm sorry. What would you like me to do rather than move on? I'm happy to do whatever you want.
Well, I want to ask, like, what is your answer to my question here? Like, why should I support a movement that is showing?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think we misunderstood. When I said let's move on, I wasn't moving past your question. I was saying let's move past what is defining Islamism. I was trying to move back to your question you were asking.
Fair. Let's do it.
I was saying because we're not going to agree on what Islamism is. That's what I was saying. So let's move on.
Seems like a straightforward dictionary definition, but okay.
It's not, though. As a scholar of Islam, I'm telling you it's not. There are multiple definitions of Islamism, from the belief in the politicization of Islam to the imposition of Sharia law as a state form. There are at least three. I could think of three, and if I thought more, I could probably think of more. But there are at least three different definitions of Islamism. And just to understand, from at least from a scholarly perspective, the Webster's definition of something isn't how we define things. That there are actually.
So let me ask you this, because you asked me a bunch of questions. So Australia.
No, actually, I haven't asked you anything. I'm still trying to answer your first question.
Okay, go ahead. Then I'll ask you a quick question.
I'll answer. You can ask. You don't have to. You can ask me a million questions, and they can take as long as you want. I just want to answer. I don't want people to think that I'm avoiding your question.
Go ahead.
Your question is, why should you support a movement that doesn't believe in your ... whether it's your humanity, your right to live, your inclusion. I'm just saying, I'm raising a big, I'm casting a big tent so that I'm not avoiding your question in any way. I think that the second piece of what I was resisting in terms of the premise is that I don't presume that most of the Free Palestine movement doesn't support your humanity, your rights. So I'm willing to let me hear me out. I'm still going to answer your question because I think the answer, even if what you're saying is true, my answer would be the same. But I want to stipulate that I don't accept the premise of the question.
Okay.
Right. When I go to JVP protests, I don't think they're challenging your humanity. When I go to Green Party organizing actions, I don't think they're challenging your humanity. When I go to Workers United protests, I don't think they're challenging your humanity. I think that much of the left is very much in agreement at this stage in history, not always, but at this stage in history, that trans rights is a legitimate struggle, just like Palestinian freedom is a legitimate struggle. Are there sectors of the movement that are transphobic? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I have not been to any political movement or organization that does not have significant amounts of transphobia in it. Mm-hmm. Even more so than anti-Semitism, even more so than homophobia, I would argue. I think that transphobia is very, very prominent in lots of places. But my concern with the question, I'm still going to answer it, but my concern with the question, you have to understand, if I say to you, Brianna, explain to me why, if you hate people from Boston, why do you spend so much time there? It's reasonable. You're not just going to start answering why you spend time in Boston. You're going to start with making it clear that you don't actually hate people from there. So what I'm doing is I'm challenging the premise of your question. So from your facial expression, one might interpret it as you're reading me as being avoidant or evasive, and I'm not. I'm saying you've made three premises in your question that I don't accept, and so I want to make it clear that I don't accept them and why.
Let's dig down into this. What is the evidence that they don't want to kill me? I mean, you see
Then
these
who doesn't want to
days
kill you?
that free Palestine, like you see them marching through the streets.
So this is my answer. I just gave you my answer.
Let me give you a really defined thing.
Okay.
Because they're talking about, when you see this, you've seen these videos coming out of New York, death to America, bring it all down, from the river to the sea, globalize the intifada, all of that. You're talking in all of this. And I want to be clear, I think they'll fail. But I think at the core, it's being driven by people that have an extremist agenda to usher Islam into law all around the world. Now, here's some evidence of this. In Australia, with this entire, the 2 hospital workers who were threatening to kill Jewish people at their hospital. I was looking into this, and are you aware, I think it was 2012, they had an incident down there where Islamists came and set up an informal secondary court system with Sharia law to informally handle disputes. And people in that community would essentially enter this parallel justice system. That is a system that would not end up very well for people like me. So I think that if you're looking at this movement globally, I do think it is anti-democratic at its core. And I think democracy is the thing that has given me my rights. So do you understand how, like, in that framework, how I would be very, very hesitant to engage with that?
Yeah, in that framework, sure. Absolutely. What I'm disagreeing with is the implicit premise or claim that that framework is normative or the template for how people understand Free Palestine writ large. I'm saying that that's not the case. If it were, I would agree with you, but it's not. So again, when you look at the Free Palestine movement, again, it's a movement, in support of the liberation and the self-determination of Palestinian people. You're recharacterizing it as a move to impose Islamic law. The Free Palestine movement is as old as the commitment to imposing the kind of Zionist vision of settling in historic Palestine, right? As long as there have been Zionist movements, there have been Palestinians saying, hey, wait a minute. These movements are happening at the same time. At each of these junctures in history, they were not declaring the goal of an Islamic state. When you look at the resistance movements of the 30s, for example, which is a huge moment, the Great Revolts, 1936 to 1939, what were they asking for? When you look at all of the white papers and the investigations by the British, they all came back with very clear reports about why the fighting was happening. No one has ever said in any of those reports, the Peel Commission, the Shaw Report, none of them have ever said, hey, the goal here is an Islamic State, because that wasn't the goal. And it's fundamentally wrong and ahistorical to suggest that the Free Palestine movement is somehow a secret movement to smuggle in Islamism. One of the most important movements in in Palestinian history is the formation of the PFLP. Are you familiar with the PFLP?
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's one of the most important resistance movements in Palestinian history, right? It was created by who? George Habash, right? You feel free to wiki it. George Habash is Christian. And one of the most important leaders is Christian. Edward Said, one of the most important Palestinian leaders and thinkers in history. Would you agree with that? You've heard of Edward Said, surely. Christian, right? So this idea that the creation of Palestinian liberation movement is a sneaky agenda to impose Islam is not true. Now, you are correct in saying that that Hamas has its roots in the Muslim Brotherhood. They were at one point the Muslim Brotherhood of Palestine, right? Coming out of the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt. And yes, they have a vision of state formation that is very much tied into Sharia law.
It's not vision. That's the reality today. They will put me to death if they find out you're transgender there. That's just the truth.
Did I say something to counter that?
No. Well, please go ahead.
You almost spoke as if I had said something counter to that. What I was, you said it's not an ambition. It may
sound like it's what they wanted to do, and it's what
right, because historically, I was talking about. Remember, I said then comes in the Hamas, right?
Sure.
And when they came in, they had an ambition. That's what I said. So they come in with this ambition. Now, I don't accept, to be clear, that every do you think there are no transgender people in Gaza?
Probably.
There are or there are not?
There probably are, like, closet.
Why haven't they all been killed?
Haven't all of them been killed?
Haven't any of them been killed? Who are these trans? Where are all these trans people being killed?
The public policy of Hamas is to have the Islamic law, which requires trans people to be the death penalty is absolutely on the table there. It just is, Mark. Let's not pretend it's not.
I'm not pretending anything. I'm asking you, this is an educational space. Just show me, teach me. Where are you getting this from?
I looked this up today. It's 100% true. If
Give
we
it to
want
me.
to look it up after the show, we can do that. I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole with you. Of course they would, Mark. Come on.
Wait a minute.
It's a hardcore Islam. Are you kidding me?
Just so I'm clear.
Are you really claiming that hardcore, you're claiming Hamas would not kill transgender people in the name of Islam? Is this really your claim?
My claim is that there are trans people in Gaza and in the West Bank.
In the West Bank, we're talking about Gaza.
Again, let me finish.
Sure.
There are, because you said Hamas, right? You agree there are members of Hamas in the West Bank, right?
Yeah, but they're not the
right.
entire
So,
government. Yeah.
So there are trans people throughout historic Palestine.
Yes.
We know they're there. I've seen them. I don't know if you've seen them. Have you been to Palestine?
I may in a few weeks. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so no. Okay, so they're there. We know they're there. They're not being killed. There's no. I don't hear any human rights records or any organization saying there's this trend of people being killed for being trans, and you're saying I should just accept that Hamas is going around killing all these trans people. I'm saying, what's the evidence of it? And all you keep saying is, come on.
You're not. Would you agree the official policies, if you're trans there, you can be murdered? We agree on that, yes?
All right, let me say it.
No, just yes or no. Just give it to me.
Let me say it differently. Let me say it differently. Are you, because maybe we're talking past each other. Are you saying, because initially you said trans people, Hamas kills trans people for being trans. And now what I hear you saying is there's a policy that allows for them to be killed. Would it be fair? Would it be more accurate for you to say that while there is that you're making a claim that there's a policy that you have no evidence that trans people are being killed by Hamas? Would that be fair to say?
If we looked into it and did a deep dive, we would find trans people that have been killed.
Okay, have you done that deep dive yet?
Mark, this is silly.
No, it's not silly. You're making an empirical claim, and
cloud the issue. Of course, this is the policy. Yeah, Mark, there was a
no, but you just moved the goalpost. Hold on, Brian. I'm not going to allow you to do that. Hold on. I'm not going to allow you to do
prove that trans people are being killed.
What you said. Listen to me. Just listen to me. What you just said 2 minutes ago was even before this conversation, you've done the research and found the evidence. And now you're saying you haven't
found
done
out
the
it
research.
was the policy. I found out it was the policy that they could kill. That's
okay.
what I found out. Yes.
So, and what I'm saying is, if you want to have a debate about the policy, which obviously, if there is a policy that explicitly says all trans people must be killed, which I have not seen, but if you say it exists,
I'm saying that's their interpretation of Islam.
Okay, but hear me out. Just allow me to finish the sentence, and then I'll let you respond to it.
Okay.
I want you to at least initially understand that my contention with you was you initially stated that anybody who's trans in Gaza gets killed.
Could be killed.
No, that's not what you said. And when you rewind it,
this is what you do, though. You fog the issue, Mark.
I'm not fogging the issue.
Of course you are.
You're saying you made a claim.
Having a discussion about the policy here, Mark.
We were not.
Discussion if
no,
I should be able to
okay.
trust
Let's. Here's what we'll do.
Yes.
We'll move on. You moved the goalpost from claiming that something.
I did not, Mark. You started obfuscating stuff, buddy. Come on.
No, you started by saying this thing is happening, and then when I asked you for proof of it, you said, "Well, it's a policy," and you were using the policy as evidence that the thing was happening. And I said, "Well, is it possible that the policy is there and it's still not actually happening?" And then you said, "Mark, you started beating the straw man about a policy." And again, I haven't seen the policy. No. So let me ask you a question. What is the policy you're referring to?
Look, we can keep
going. Is that a fair question? Is that
Mark? I've answered this question. So I want to say
you haven't.
I want to say this to you respectfully. Something you do, because I did research this before then, you tend to really obfuscate and slide things and to go down these rabbit holes, and you ask way more questions than you answer.
Well, I'm
And
an
I don't
interviewer,
wanna do
but
that.
sure.
Yes.
But so, okay, let me just ask one question
Please.
for clarity.
One more. Go ahead.
On this issue. You say that you have found a transphobic policy in Gaza.
I think it's fairly obvious that's Hamas's policy is to kill.
And I'm saying, what is the basis? I'm saying, where did you find this? Where is it so that I can find it? That's a fair question.
It is their interpretation. Here's good evidence. So I'm sure you're best friends with what is his name? Dropbox News, the reporter there. They had a story that came out this year that was very anti-Israel, talking about how Israeli intelligence had gone and had identified trans people and gay people and were threatening to out them to Hamas. And that's how they were getting intelligence over there, was by identifying these people, because those gay and trans people believed they would be killed if they were outed. So I think you can go talk to your friends over at Dropbox News and ask them if they think that's a danger.
Okay, so may I respond to that?
Please.
What you just pointed to there was not a policy, but a fear that they, for example, no, listen to me. A trans person will be sexually assaulted in prison exponentially more likely in the United States. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Does that mean that there's a policy that trans people can be sexually assaulted in prison? No, it's a practice. So there, you every time I ask you to answer one, I asked you to show that it happens, and you said, well, here's a policy. I said, well, show me the policy. You said, well, somebody's worried that it's going to happen. These are all three different things. If there is a policy, and I'm not, it's clear you don't know the policy, and that's fine. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Listen to me. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I don't know of this policy. You're saying you do, but I keep asking, what is the where is
policy? Is their interpretation of Islam and Islamist law that they've put in over there. You've got to know that Gaza has a really radical, Hamas has a really radical interpretation of this.
It's just, I don't know. I've spent enough time in Palestine and had these conversations, including with Palestinian LGBTQ organizations like Aswat, like Epos, etc. And I just haven't seen or heard from them even the thing that you're saying without evidence. And just to be clear, because I don't want you to say I'm avoiding your question. I want to get back to answering your question, or would you like to stay here? You pick.
No, go ahead, man.
Where do you want me to go?
I think people are going to watch this and going to think it's nuts to claim that Hamas does not want to kill trans people. I think most people are going to think you're crazy.
Right, but do you see what you just did again? Then I disagree with you about whether trans people were getting killed in Gaza, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you just said is, I disagree with you about what Hamas wants to do to trans people. I asked you about if there is an actual policy. And when I asked you to show me the policy, you said, people are going to say it's nuts that you don't. No, let me finish my sentence. Brianna, I never once had a dispute with you about what Hamas wants to do to trans people, because I'm not in Hamas's head. I never said that. What I said was that I do not believe, based on the evidence that I've seen or any reports, that trans people are being like widely killed in Gaza. That's what I said. And when then when I asked for evidence, you pointed to a policy. I said, what is the policy? And now that we've moved past that policy conversation, you are summing up the conversation by framing it as if I just said to you, Hamas doesn't want to kill trans people. That's what you just said. You said people are going to say you're crazy when they play this back for saying that Hamas doesn't want to kill trans people. I never had, that wasn't even our conversation. We've never had none of this exchange has been about what Hamas wants to do. What I've been disputing is what's actually happening on the ground to trans people, and whether or not there's an actual policy about it.
So let's think through this, though, Mark. Let's think through this. What do you need to be trans?
Can you at least acknowledge, in good faith, can you acknowledge that you misrepresented my position? Can you just acknowledge that?
I think that we're probably talking past each other. I really pride myself in trying to be good.
Do you still think that my contention is that it was about what Hamas wants to do to trans people?
I think I understand your point. And
right. And you understand that I was never saying that now.
It feels like obfuscation, but I
no, I'm saying that's not what we're talking about. You're completely if you so let's move forward then, because if you still think I'm obfuscating rather than just conceding that maybe you just misrepresented my point, then we're just gonna keep talking like this.
Okay.
So
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this one. For you to become trans, what has to happen? What do you need to be a trans woman?
Say that again. I
what do you need to be a trans woman?
What does it mean to be a trans
What
woman?
do you need? What do you need from your government to be a trans woman?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think the state gets to determine whether someone's trans.
I think you gotta get some estrogen. You gotta get some anti-androgens. You've got to, like, this is not a healthcare system in Gaza that's going to produce a lot of trans people, right? So the policy that we're talking about here,
I don't agree with that, but I'm not going to argue with a trans person about that.
What I'm saying is there's not going to be a whole, well,
can I ask a clarifying question about that?
please, yes.
Are you saying that if someone doesn't get the drugs, they can't identify as trans?
You have gender dysphoria at that point, but you're not trans until you transition. So, right, it's
So not, for you. I'm asking literally for clarifying. I'm not disputing this.
Sure.
So you're saying that, like, if in this body right now, I identify as a woman, I feel like I'm a woman, I move through the world as a woman, but I do nothing physically to change my physical appearance or or any sort of biological stuff happening through medicine. You're saying I have gender dysphoria. I'm not trans. I'm
saying you're not a transsexual until you transition. Like, these are clinical words. They have actual meanings that are relevant.
Yes, I'm just asking for. I'm just asking for. I literally don't know this. You're teaching me. I'm asking for understanding. So then, would we then?
I'm guessing Gaza does not have gender affirming clinics where you can go run through the DSM-5 or the ICD-10 protocols and get diagnosed with gender dysphoria and get some HRT. So I think, like, perhaps the policies of Hamas have led to the population of trans people, if that makes sense to you.
No, I mean, yes, I understand the argument. I'm saying I disagree with it, and I will tell you why.
Okay.
Prior to Hamas's rule, these clinics did not exist. You'd agree with that, right?
I would assume so.
I mean, because your argument only makes sense if when Hamas comes, all that stuff goes away.
We didn't really have gender clinics in 2005, Mark. It's like, this is just like, we're getting into an area where I really know a lot about. Like, we just didn't have gender clinics before. Yeah.
So then, your argument is that because those clinics don't exist. No, I'm trying to understand. I'm not mocking. Yes. I'm really asking. That means what? Just so I'm just so that I can follow.
I'm saying, if your evidence is that trans people are not being rounded up in the streets, I'm saying the lack of healthcare institutions to create trans people is probably a reason there's not a whole lot of trans people in Gaza. But if they did exist...
No, that wasn't my argument. Just to be clear, that's not my argument.
Sure.
That was absolutely not my argument.
Okay.
Just to be clear, that wasn't the argument, right? You're misrepresenting.
I feel like we're going around in circles. And
we're not. I was going to go somewhere else, but you asked if you could ask me another question, which was how do you make a trans person? What does the state have to do to produce a trans person? Yeah, I agree. I think there are a couple of things I'd say here, right? One, the lack of, how can I explain it? There are two separate things happening here simultaneously, right? Our debate is not about whether or not, as I understand it, is not about whether or not Hamas is supportive of transgender communities.
Mm-hmm.
The debate is whether the pro-Palestinian movement is transphobic.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that there's a conflation happening right now by saying that because this group of people is not welcoming to trans people, that means that the mission of Palestinian liberation is that thing. So for example, there are very few liberation movements that aren't sexist, very few liberation movements that aren't homophobic, very few liberation movements that aren't anti-Black, if not all of them, right? That is a legitimate criticism of these movements, and I'm not disputing that. And I think that's where the straw man comes up sometimes. I'm not making the case to you that Hamas is great on transgender people. I'm making the case to you that, one, that's separate from the liberation movement, and two, Hamas does not encapsulate the entirety of the pro-Palestine movement. And it seems odd to me that there's two. How many people 2.2 million people in Gaza, give or take, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's not even, forget allies. That's not even the majority or half even of Palestinians in the world or in the region. And so this idea that the behavior of the people who rule that 2.2 million is indicative of the pro-Palestine movement, I don't accept as a premise from the beginning. So even if everything you say about Hamas is true, even if they were the devils incarnate, right?
Which they are.
And I'm not making a case for or against Hamas right now. I'm saying that has nothing to do, that is not the representation of the pro-Palestine movement. That's not the pro-Palestine movement.
So I think this is an interesting road we can go down, because I think we have two ideas here. And I think this is really interesting. We can talk about this in good faith, because I think you see the Free Palestine movement as being fundamentally about liberating, if that's what you want to call it, a certain area, like
liberating Palestine.
Liberating Palestine. I think you think it's constrained to that. This is really interesting, because it's not how I see it. I see Free Palestine as something that is funded externally by the United States, funneling tons of money here, that is fundamentally based in anti-Semitism, that is seeking to undermine Western democracy. And I think very strong evidence of this. I'm sure you saw these students that were.
I just want to make sure I heard you right.
Yes.
The United States is funding a movement to destroy.
No. Foreign. I'm sorry, my voice is quiet. I know. Foreign.
I thought you made a mistake, and I want to make. You said funded by the United States.
Outside of the United States, by the enemies of the United States.
I think you misspoke. That's why I'm correcting you.
Maybe I did. It is very late for me. It's 11 o'clock. I've been up since 4 a.m.
Yeah, it's same for me. I didn't want people later on to hear you misspeak.
Thank you very much. So I think of the Free Palestine movement as rooted in a very anti-Western, anti-democracy, United States worldview that wants to tear down the United States and replace it with something else. I think for some people it's Islamism. I think for some people it's communism. But from my point of view, democracy in the West is what has led to my rights and the best healthcare trans people have ever had. So I feel really strongly that the impulse to tear that down is dangerous to me personally, irrespective of what I may think about what's going on in Palestine. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just, let me ask you a question. Do you think that the struggle for the creation of Israel was a righteous struggle? Do you think that Jews have a right to be where they are?
100%.
If they were transphobic, would you no longer support that right?
There are a lower percentage of Jews and Israelis that are transphobes.
No.
I deal with. Hold on.
Listen to me. That's not what I asked you.
Please.
That's not what I asked you.
No,
again,
it's answering a question. Just let me finish.
No, that wasn't the question. You're answering a question I didn't ask. I'm not asking about that. I assume that I agree with you that
Sure.
homophobia, transphobia rates in Israel are lower, right?
Sure.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking a hypothetical counterfactual. In other words, if Israel were as homophobic as you understand Gaza to be, would you still be as supportive of Israel? Do you understand how you weren't answering the question before?
Probably not. I think it would fundamentally, it would change my assessment of if they're a moral cause, 100%.
So then this is where I get confused.
Why?
Because your argument is that they have a right to be there, that it's their land.
Yeah.
Would it be less their land if they were transphobic?
No, I'd probably still support it. You asked if I would support it as much.
Okay. Forget the word fair. That's fair. Withdraw. Take the word as much out. I'm asking, would you still support the movement? Would you still believe that they were on the right side of history?
Yes.
Would you still believe they were correct?
100%.
Right. So when you asked me, that's the answer to your question. Hear me. Just hear me out.
I am.
When you asked me why I would support Palestine when it's transphobic, it would be, and I don't accept that it's transphobic, but I'm saying just to answer your question, even if I accepted, and that's what I started with, right? Even if I accepted your argument that the movement is just the most transphobic movement in the world, that wouldn't nullify the legitimacy of Palestinian national liberation, in the same way that for you, Jewish national liberation is not nullified by their hypothetical homophobia. It's a different issue.
Sure.
So what I would say is, yes, they still have a right to, people have a right to their land. And we have a duty to hold them accountable for their racism or their homophobia or their transphobia or whatever, or their anti-Semitism or whatever the thing might be. Now, again, I wholly reject the narrative that the pro-Palestine movement is transphobic. But what I'm saying is that because I believe the pro-Palestine movement is a righteous struggle and a principled struggle for the national liberation of Palestinian people, and that they have a right to that land, I don't hold their character flaws, whatever they could be. I don't hold their contradictions, whatever they might be, against them to say you no longer deserve your land. I could not go to Native Americans and say, yeah, there's a lot of patriarchy here, so therefore you don't deserve America, right? Like it's not. So my answer, ironically, is the exact same as yours, that you would not allow transphobia to negate a legitimate claim of national liberation. Is that it?
I understand what you're talking about there, and I think we will agree to disagree on that. But my question mark,
What are you disagreeing with?
I just the perspective. Like I am pro-Israel. You are not.
No. But what I'm saying is, at the level of logic,
your logic there is sound. Your logic there is sound. Granted.
Okay, thank you.
So
that's all I'm asking.
This is where this is the policy. This is what I'm talking about. When it comes to the United States, when it comes to the West, when it comes to Western values, when it comes to democracy, I think there is an Islamist project out there to weaken democracy around the world. I think you're seeing this play out in countries in Europe right now. And I think that when you see people marching through the states of the streets of America, saying things from the river to the sea, globalize the Intifada, death to America, I think at its core, this is a movement that is about tearing down our country. And I'm just going to repeat this. I think some people want to do it to usher in a communist future. I think some people want to do it to like usher in a radical future for different minority groups. I think some of them want to do it for Islam, but it is fundamentally a mission to tear down democracy. And for me, democracy is the thing that has given me my health care and my civil rights. So why would I support a movement that seeks to destroy the thing that I need to live?
But the logical contradiction there is you just said you would continue to support the Zionist movement if they had those positions, those anti-trans positions. So, right? That's
I wouldn't support Zionism if it was trying to tear down the United States. No.
No.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. I apologize.
Yeah. What I'm at the core, what I'm hearing you say is, your reasons for opposing the pro-Palestinian movement are twofold.
Yes.
One is you actually oppose the movement, yes, and you oppose their ideologies.
Yes.
That are and what I'm saying is, the problem with that is, for me, is twofold. Because the side that you do support, even if you didn't support their ideologies, i.e., if they were transphobic and racist, they wouldn't be anti-Semitic, obviously. If they were transphobic and racist, you would hate the transphobia and racism, and you'd hold them accountable for it. But you would still say Zionism and the Jews have a right to be in historic Palestine, right?
Yes.
Because right. So their transphobia wouldn't stop you from being correct in their struggle, but it stops you from saying that they're correct in their struggle. The Palestinians are correct in their struggle. That's where I'm disagreeing with you.
Sure.
Now, and then at the core of the other piece of this for me is, and this is where we talked about transactionalism, right? I don't believe I take transactionalism off the table because that'll take us down another rabbit hole. I'll just say in conclusion that I don't the idea that there is some secret Islamist plot to take over the world or the West, to destroy the West and democracy, is very unnerving to me, in the same way that I find the anti-Semitic narratives of secret Jewish cabals and plots to take over the world, I find to be deeply not only anti-Semitic and racist, but wrong-headed and ahistorical. I think that Palestinians have been very clear and articulate about what they want, and that is a free Palestine. Islam, they have not called to take over the entire world. They have not called to take over the entire Middle East. They're very,
Just globalize the Intifada mean?
It mean what does Intifada mean? What's an Intifada?
Oh, see, I know you're gonna get. Do you really think that's college kids like marching down the street screaming that? Of course, it's a "Bring Down America" chant, Mark.
No, you asked me. You asked me what does globalized Intifada mean, and I'm saying,
yeah, I am asking you. Please tell me what you think it means functionally.
It's about global solidarity. That the resistance that the resistance shouldn't just happen in Palestine; it should happen everywhere.
The resistance to what?
To American imperialism, to settler colonialism.
There we go.
We should. You don't think we should resist American imperialism?
I think we're living in a tripolar world, and I don't think America is a particularly imperialist place right now. No.
Not right. So when Donald Trump says we're going to call it the Gulf of America, you don't see that as an imperialist move?
I think it's insanely childish. Is it textbook imperialism? No. Is it dumb? Yes.
When Donald Trump says that that Gaza should be emptied out and that they should be forcibly transferred out and that America will take it over and make it the new French Riviera, is that imperialist?
It's an imperialist wish. It's not an imperialist policy being implemented.
You're not adding the word policy to the conversation. Do you think that
I only care about things in the real world? Donald Trump says all kinds of stupid stuff.
Do you think the American invasion of Iraq was imperialist?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so when you say that,
the biggest mistake of my lifetime by far.
Right. So when you say American imperialism doesn't happen, does that now counter that point?
I didn't say it didn't happen, Mark.
You said it doesn't.
Characterizing me. I said right now I don't think America is a particularly imperialist country because we live in a tripolar world, which is not the case in the 80s.
We have illegal troops in Iraq and Syria right now, March 6th, 2025.
I would posit respectful if we start talking about American imperialism, we're going to be here till 4 a.m. So okay. I think this is not a good form.
Let me just ask you a yes or no question.
Well, I would really like this answer because I don't feel like you have. Why should I support a movement that is trying to tear down democracy? You don't do you just fundamentally not agree that there's I want to re-answer it because if I don't, help me understand your answer.
Since you do the meta level critique of my arguments, and what you often do is you state what I haven't done after I've done it. So then if the audience is listening, it seems as if I haven't answered your question where I've answered it 3 times.
Okay.
At first I disagreed with the premise, right? You asked me, why would I support this you said, why would I support X when it does Y? And I said, I don't agree that it does Y. So I can't, so right, that's the first thing. And then the second part of it was, I said, but even if it does support Y, I've said this 10 times now, even if it did, I would still support it because I believe it's a principled righteous struggle. And then I compared it and gave a hypothetical of you doing so with Zionism, saying for the same, I said I would do it for the same reason that you would support the Zionist struggle, even if they were transphobic, because it's a principled righteous struggle at the same time that I would hold them accountable. So I
hear that, but I'm interpreting, I'm seeing this as decoupled here, where the policy of what Israel and Palestine are struggling over and the struggle with their land over there, this is the disconnect in our logic here. I see this as decoupled from the secondary political mission to bring instability to the West.
Right, and I'm saying I don't believe that that's happening. So
it's fairly obvious.
And I understand you do. But what I'm saying is me saying I don't agree with your premise doesn't mean I'm not answering your question. It means I don't accept that as an answer. If I ask you, tell me right now why Hamas is the best political party in the world, right? I can't.
Let's dig into this though. Why don't? How do you not think there's a real anti-establishment vibe to free Palestine? Do you not think it wants to burn down the system? Not just in this country, in many countries?
So, yes and no.
Okay.
The yes is to the first half of the question, which was anti-establishment.
Yes.
Radical movements are designed to reorganize society in ways that are different, but ostensibly more just and fair, right? So anti-establishment, yes, but that doesn't mean that they want to burn down Western democracy. That's the no part. So I don't accept that they're trying to burn down American democracy. What I do accept is that they are trying to change the world. But also the pro-Palestine movement has so many different factions. Yeah. For example, the Notori Karta, very small group of people, right? They're Zionist Jews or anti-Zionist Jews. They're Orthodox anti-Zionist Jews, right? They have a very specific reason for wanting to do this. To not see Israel form in the way that it has, right? Palestinians in the land have a very particular reason, right? Which is that they want their homes back. They want to return home. They want national self-determination. Some want 2 states. Some want 1 state. Some want a binational. We could go on all the different possibilities, right? Some people are anti-imperialist, right? And they're not Palestinian or Israeli, but they see what's happening and see it as part of a bigger global crisis of power from the West and Western intervention through the British first and now through the United States. And they're saying, look, this is wrong. Some people are just about human rights. Some people are Muslim and they see the occupation of Jerusalem in particular, right? Where you acknowledge Jerusalem's under occupation, right?
I would not frame it that way. No.
Okay. You agree that there are Jordanian and Israeli troops?
I would agree it's contested.
Is the Israeli military occupying it?
Occupying it?
Okay, forget it. I don't want to go down that road. Fine.
Okay.
Whatever. Muslims are saying that these people who are in there need to go, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the movements have so many different people who for so many different reasons. Some are like, look, I'm just staying in solidarity with you because you're unfree and I want to be free, right?
Sure.
All of these things are different pieces and they're moving pieces, they're moving parts. So even to sort of unilaterally, or not unilaterally, but to sort of put a broad, to paint the movement with a broad brush of intent or goals around democracy or anti-establishment or whatever may or may not be true. There are conservatives at this point who are like, look, we don't give a shit. We just want this to end. It costs too much money, right? Sure. Like, so what I'm saying is, no, I don't think, I don't like framing the movement or describing the movement in that way.
So help me understand this. Let me ask you this in really good faith. So let's say I've got $2 billion. I just hand it to you, Marc Lamont Hill. I say, I want for you to supercharge the Free Palestine movement in this country. Do it however you want. Please do it peacefully without bloodshed. Walk me through, like, what is the, like, really get granular with me. Help me understand when you're saying you want to tear down American imperialism. Help walk me through how that translates into the government. Like, help me understand. Are we talking about tearing down the Constitution and starting a new country? Are we talking new people in charge? Help me understand what that looks like.
For me, I don't know if I need money to do what I need to do, right? If we're talking about American, like, if we're talking about, and then I do have to run, like, literally we're out of time.
We got to do a longer show sometime, man.
This has been an hour. As a matter of fact, because I literally have to get to this baby, would you be comfortable if I don't answer this question now, since it's not about this topic? I don't want people to feel like I'm running from the topic.
You know what? We went longer than we were supposed to, but please do have 20 me back. This is always fun. So
come back next week and I'll answer that question. I'll start with Dismantling America. Okay. Thank you. Good to see you. Appreciate you.
Marc, I just got to give you some good vibes before we go. Look, I know it gets feisty when I come on. I truly appreciate you. I think you're a very smart person. And I enjoy trying to find a way to bridge this gap together. So thank you.
That means a lot. And that's why I keep bringing you back, so we can keep trying to have these discussions. And if we don't change each other's minds, maybe we change the audience's mind.
There we go.
We'll see. Thank you, Brianna. Everybody, that's the show for tonight. Thank you for watching. I literally have to run. Some of you are going to be wildly frustrated. Some of you are going to be satisfied. Some of you are going to be pissed off at me. But I think this is an important conversation to have. Let's keep having it. Shout out to everybody that donated tonight. C Lynn 84, TK donated 10 memberships. Tropical Ding Dong made his comment. We read it already. Janana said, please educate her. She seems intelligent and reasonable, but this conflation is while there are some conflations happening throughout the night. Bring it to Greene. Shout out to you. Bring it to Greene. You made the important point here. That's sort of what I was saying. All these people aren't Islamists. Most aren't. These are just wild talking points. Free Palestine just wants free Palestine, freedom from Israel. They don't give a shit about the USA. Exactly. They're trying to frame it as a global, like, intifada and a global caliphate. But it's not. Anyway, great conversation, y'all. Glad to talk to you. I appreciate you. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're so inclined, hit the join button and become a monthly subscriber to the channel. It gives us the financial stability we need to make this all happen every single night. If you can't make a monthly contribution, make a one-time contribution tonight, y'all. You see how hard I'm working over here. I'm sweating. Go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and drop something in. $1 is great. $10 is great. $1 million is even better. Anything in between, we love. Just give what you can. No amount is too big. No amount is too small. But if everybody watching right now could drop $10 in the Cash App, the PayPal, the Venmo, or the Zelle, we would meet our financial goals for the month, and that would be amazing. Please consider doing it. I'll see you soon. Peace.